Hey all, Mark Vega, Run Long After 60. Woo-wee! If this is the first time you're here, I'm glad you found us. If it's not, well, you know how it goes. Every episode of the Run Long After 60 podcast starts with me out on a run, moving. And usually it's right after I've interviewed a unicorn. Today's guest is Ed Ettinghausen. You may know him as the Jester. This guy's run more than 400 races on Ultra Sign Up, hundreds of other more races. He's 63 years old right now. He is an icon. He's emerging right now, Ed, in his most valuable state as the Mindshift Coach. If you ever want to be coached by anyone, wouldn't you want to be coached by someone who's put on the miles, who's done the races, who's showed up again and again? He just crossed the 300 mark, number of 100-mile races completed. And in the process, he DNF'd. He didn't finish 38 of them. By way of context, I've been running for a couple of years, and I'm excited to be out there at 62, but I've only done 11 races. Over 400. So many races that he's got so many more did not finish attributes than people have run in the first place. But the data don't lie. And remember, it's data, not failure, in my DNF lexicon. He says running at any distance and at any age is 90% mental, and the other half is in your head. Of course, he's borrowing from Yogi Berra's commentary that said, 90% in your head and 50% physical. I think Ed's right. 90% mental, half of it's in your head. He's the coach I want. And I love my coach, Henry Howard. He's great. Ed is the kind of coach who can supplement, complement every kind of runner. So when I realized he was coaching and diving into that business model of Mindshift coaching, something I'd never really heard of before, never heard someone put a designation on it, I'm in. I thought, I am in. I want to hear more. If you like what you see or hear, and if this resonates with you, I'm glad to hear it. This is a YouTube-focused podcast, so go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, like the content, and share it with someone, would you? The podcast is published every Sunday at noon Pacific time. We also publish the audio versions at 5 a.m. on Sunday mornings, just in case you're out on a run and you want to catch us there. I think you're going to love this side of the Jester. So are you ready? I'm ready. It's time. It's time for the Mindshift Coach. It's time for the Jester. It's time for Ed Ettinghausen. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Mark Vega, welcome to another episode of Run Long After 60. I am excited about this one, not just because of the guest, but how the guest presents himself, and I bet you've seen him before. This is Ed, the Jester Ettinghausen. Ed, thank you for joining us today.
It's my honor. Thank you for inviting me, Mark. Looking forward to this.
You might have seen Ed because he is the Jester. He has done more records, world records and otherwise, than you probably even imagine. He's 63 years old. I'm going to zip through some of his stats right now because this interview is not really about the stats. But to the extent we need some authenticity in the house, this is all the authenticity that we really, really need. If you look on Ultra Sign Up, that's where I get all the information I can about people who are doing trail races and trail running. Now, to give you perspective, I just started. I'm a baby. I don't even have 11 races on my Ultra Sign Up page, but I'm proud of each of those 11. Ed has 405 races on Ultra Sign Up. He is number one ranked in the United States and the world for 100-mile finishes. In February of 2025, he set the world record for most 100-mile finishes in 12 months. He did 56 of them. And importantly, he told me the other day, let's not forget, with all those wins, guess what? I've had 38 did not finishes. In other words, he wasn't able to finish the race 38 times. Can you imagine how many races you have to do to actually really be good at it and then still have 38 where you didn't finish? Okay, that's it. Plenty of other statistics here. I'll drop them in the show notes. He's on Instagram, Running with the Jester. He has his own podcast, Running with the Jester. But here's why we're talking. And I believe I think I saw the Jester on the course, maybe 2017 LA Marathon. Got to check that, or could have been a 2022 and New York Marathon. But I saw this gentle person wearing the Jester's outfit and a bright suit and colorful hat. And he's running. He's running faster than me, and I'm not a fast runner, but he is moving along. And when I saw this guy, two things happened. I thought, that's the magic of running. We can run anywhere and put smiles on people's faces. And this guy put a smile on my face, and I appreciate that. But why we're here today is because he is now launching a coaching business. He's a Mindshift coach. Not like it just happened. He's been doing it for a minute. But I really want to focus on the extreme value of having someone with so much experience joining us on the podcast with older runners and people as we age, and really understanding the power of mind shift and what it means to be a coach in that universe. So, Ed, I've been thinking about our phone call every minute since we hung up a couple of days ago. All the things you most want to talk about is coaching. And I'm really into that and very excited about that. So what does it feel like? First question, thank you for being here. What does it feel like to have all those races behind you? You've got all this value of experience, and now you're ready to start helping other people really accomplish their dreams. Take us, instead of all the races, take us right there. How did you go from doing all these amazing races that you have done and continue to do, and decide that it's time to share your knowledge as a coach?
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. I've actually been coaching for quite a long time, but not being paid for it. So it's hey, Ed, can you help me with this? What do you think about this training program? What kind of mileage should I do for this race? What should be my strategy? And I happily would offer advice. And then I had a couple of people who said, Ed, how much do you charge for coaching? And that was kind of a new concept to me because I didn't charge. I just did it for free. I enjoyed it and wanted to help people to fulfill their dreams. And so it's sort of evolved, and it's gotten to the point now to where I have more people asking me. And so I needed to develop more of a structured program, and my time does have value. So I needed to put a price point on it as well. And so that's where we're at now. I've been challenged to make it more than just a passing hobby. And so that's what I'm working on now, and making myself available to others to help them fulfill their dreams. And my focus mostly as a coach is really I call it a mind shift coach, because I have learned that really there's so much of this sport is mental. I have a little sort of a callback to Yogi Berra. I like to say that ultra running, especially 100-mile racing, which is my specialty, 100-mile or longer, it's 90% mental, and the other 50% is all in your head. Obviously, that doesn't math out, but that's the whole point. Is it really does start with the mindset, and I don't like the word mindset because to me, I think set has been like set in concrete. I like the mind shift because you're shifting from one gear to the next, starting in neutral and then shifting into first gear and then getting that momentum going. And then once you've got to that level, shifting to the next gear. So that's something that I've developed. It's an ongoing, evolving process, the mind shift. And it's something that I experienced myself, that I'm always working on that. There's a certain point we can get to physically, but as we talked about before, at a certain age, we're seeing our PRs more and more in the rearview mirror. At least that's where I am right now. There's things I've accomplished that I'll never see again, but I'm okay with that. I did a race a couple years ago with a guy in his 80s. It's a 3-day race, and he had gotten a little over 100 miles, and I threw out the phrase that we say all the time, "Hey, Tim, someday we won't be able to do this, but today is not that day." And Tim said, "Ed, I got one for you." He said, "I'm slower than I used to be, but let me think about this. I'm slower than I used to be, but I'm faster than I'm going to be." And it took me a second to realize what he was talking about. And those of us who are sort of over the hill with our PRs and our best times, that definitely resonates. And so I take where I am right now and realize that I'm going to get slower, but that's okay. I accept that. And so part of my job as a coach is to work with people where they are right now. Are they at a point to where they're still going up? They're getting faster and faster and better. And so work on that. And if that's not the point, if they're at the other side, help them realize that it's okay, accept it, and just enjoy it. And if I can share what I've learned and my philosophy, and if it helps, and again, I'm just one person, I'm still trying to figure it out as I go. Even as many races as I've done, there's still more to learn. I'm still learning all the time. And I learn from people constantly, even sometimes a runner who's doing his first 100-mile race, and I've done hundreds of them. I'm trying to share what I can with him or her, but I'm also learning from them. So that's where I'm at. If I can share my knowledge, and if it helps someone to accomplish their goal, then it's a win-win.
That's so clear. And you told me before that it wasn't just about crossing the finish line, it's about what it took to get there. And the Yogi Berra quote, 90% mental and the other 50% is physical. I think yours is a much better improved sentiment, 90% mental and the other half's in your head. I love that. So break that down. What about someone who's never run more than, half a marathon, and you're at mile 60 of a 100-mile race and everything is failing? What's actually happening in the brain? And what do you do about it?
All right. So some of these things I sort of learned intuitively. And then as I started doing more research, I found out that there's actually scientific basis and research to this. So if we keep it simple, and that's one of the things that I always try and do, is just keep it simple. There's too many systems that have way too many steps, and just make it more complicated than it needs to be. So basically, there's two brains we have. There's the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And I don't want this to get too complicated, but so what I've done is I've named each one of them. So the amygdala starts with the letters AMY. So I call the amygdala brain Amy. The prefrontal cortex I call Pre, as in Steve
Okay.
Prefontaine. And I've known probably 4 or 5 Amy's that are 100-mile runners that are all really, really good. So there's no specific Amy I'm thinking of. Amy's a very reactive, a very emotional brain, and she's the guard. She's the gatekeeper of every decision that we make. So if I were to talk to you and say, "Hey, Mark, I think you should do a 100-mile race." Now, if you're not in that mindset, if that's not something you're already interested in, automatically Amy's going to come to the forefront and say, no, stop. Don't even listen to this crazy Jester guy. We can't do that. 100 miles? Are you kidding? People die running marathons. You can't do 100 miles. And plus, it's really dangerous for you. It can hurt your heart and your knees. Your knees can't handle it. You know that. And then remember when you were a kid and you did that race that one time and you came in last. Remember how embarrassed and humiliated you were? Forget it. Just walk away. Don't even talk to this guy. And that's the amygdala. And Amy's doing her job. Her job is to protect us and keep us safe. And you know what? Some of the things that Amy might bring up could actually be true. I mean, people do die at races. It could happen. So that's the gatekeeper, Amy. Then there's the prefrontal cortex. And think of Steve Prefontaine. That guy was unstoppable. And he would set goals to do just the most outrageous thing, and he'd make it happen, And he's the guy that came up with the only good pace is suicide pace. So, but the prefrontal cortex is a more logical brain, and it's slower to react. And it goes back to one of the greatest books is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and that book basically is two books in one. The first part of the book is his experience in the concentration camps and losing so many friends and barely getting out alive himself. And then the second part of the book is how our brains work, and that there's a stimulus and the response, but there is a pause in between. And what we do between the stimulus and the response is what sets our whole life. And so Amy's right there. She wants us to not look at anything that could be scary, that could be dangerous, that could put us at any kind of a risk. But getting past Amy, the gatekeeper, to the prefrontal cortex, that's the problem, because the prefrontal cortex starts to think logically, okay, is this something that is dangerous? Have people done this before? And that's the first step is, has it been done before? Well, it has been done before. Has it been done before successfully? It has. And in fact, yes, people do die, but if you look at the statistics of how many people don't die, which Amy doesn't want to think about that, it might be 200,000 to 1. 199,999 people won't die, but Amy doesn't look at that. But the prefrontal cortex, says, okay, let's look at that. We're making a decision based on something that's so outrageously minute that's really not even something we should even think much about. And then other things that Amy might say is like, look, you tried something that's before. Look how many times you have failed. And if we allow that, then we say, no, I'm not going to try. The prefrontal cortex says, okay, look at how many times you tried something and you've succeeded. Every single situation that you've been involved in that maybe was a roadblock or something that had risk, or maybe you even failed at. Well, the one thing is you survived it. If you're alive, you survived. And so the more of those things that you have survived, the stronger the prefrontal cortex becomes. And we can look at that and say, look, yes, there are times that I have failed, but look at all the times that I have succeeded. Let's focus on those. So that is the problem when we've been in a situation where we're super tired, we're exhausted physically, we're out of energy, like in the middle of a 100-mile race. And that's when Amy steps forward and starts to take over. And we have to realize that that's the protective mechanism. We've got to work on bringing that down. And so research shows all those things that come up, if you can name them with one or two words, like fear or shame or whatever category it falls into, when you are able to actually name that emotion, then you can now control it and you can get past it. The problem is we don't do that. And what happens is we just completely, and I still have this myself. It's not like I'm immune to it. I know how the process works, but I still have to be aware of it and see when it's happening to me. But when we can name whatever that emotion is and realize that we actually do have control between that stimulus and the response, that little bit of a pause, we can decide which way we're going to go. When we can do that and we start doing that more and more, we can get past this issue. I've seen it so many times where someone's
Good.
been in a really, really bad, dark place, going through a really rough patch. And sometimes all it takes is a word or two and can turn them around. But I've also seen where people are so deep into that nothing's going to turn them around. So I relate it to like electrical power, because our brains work on electrical power and synapsal pathways, and it gets stronger and stronger the more we use them. So I look at someone who is struggling, and again, sometimes a word or two is all it takes. And it's like flipping on a switch. You turn the light on because you're in a dark place, and you shine the light on the bigger picture for them. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Putting in perspective that you're okay, you're doing fine. You know, what you're describing, what you're feeling, you know what that makes you, all those things you're feeling, it makes me weak and terrible, and it makes me a bad person. No, it makes you normal. What you are feeling, those are just normal things. You just haven't felt it before because you've never been to 50 miles before.
Makes you human.
It's normal. So flipping the light.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes
you're
you human.
Flipping the light on allows you to see that.
I love Amy and Pri. Let's stick with them for just a minute and go backwards a second to touching on an important part of running. And whether you're doing marathons, but usually it's ultra marathons, we have the concept of a statement of fact, did not finish. No judgment, just did not finish. For whatever reason, you did not finish the race that you started. I like to refer to that as DNF, as data, not failure. But in any event, you, as the master with so many hundreds of 100-mile races and hundreds of other distances and many marathons, so many races. And out of all those races, 38 times you did not finish. And most people rarely have a handful of DNFs, and like me, they might be proud of them. But to have 38, it means that's a lot of lessons, I think. So, and let's talking with Amy and Pri, or talking about your Amy and Pri, as you didn't finish a race, pick any one of them, and you've had so many finishes. Talk about Amy and Pri while you're in the middle of not finishing, and can that be adjusted? Can the conversation you have with yourself, with Amy and Pri, can you prepare for that before the next race? Like, how do you handle the DNF knowing that Amy and Pri are with you the whole time?
I think you can. And I think there's different techniques that can be used. One of the things that you could do is put yourself into situations that challenge you, that you would normally react to immediately, and take that pause and decide how you're going to react and respond. One of the things that I like to do, if you look on my Jester Nation page on Facebook, I'll post something, and many times the only thing that I'll put, the title I'll put is, I'm here to learn. And then I'll post something that's controversial because I want to hear what people have to say. I'm usually don't share my opinion necessarily. Maybe somewhere in the comments I might, because so many times I've formed an opinion and I know what I think, and then I start to see people's responses and I start to think, you know what? I never thought about that. That's actually a really good point. You know what? Maybe I'm going to change my mind here a little bit. And by doing that, you start to strengthen Pri, and you start to realize that Amy, although she's doing exactly what she's supposed to do, protect you, keep you safe and sound and secure. But again, emotional, reacting quickly with emotion and not reacting with logic. So you could put yourself into those situations on a daily basis and strengthen that response mechanism. I had a situation that really brought this to light for me. I was one of the Badwater races. We had a jockeying some vehicles, and so I was in the car with a runner from Brazil, and he actually had a DNF, which is really unfortunate. But so we were in the vehicle driving out of the Badwater Basin area to a place called Pahrump. It's where one of the vehicles were, and we were coming into town, and this guy in a truck just cut right in front of him and like cut him right. I mean, he had to like slam on the brakes to keep from hitting him. Now there's 4 people in the car. 3 of us are Americans and this Brazilian. And the 3 of us are like, what? What's wrong with that guy? What an idiot. What's he trying to do? There are other colorful words that were used. And this guy, this Brazilian guy, is just like not even phased at all. We're like, didn't you see that guy? He's like, yeah, that's how people drive in Rio all the time. He's from Rio de Janeiro. He's like, that's just normal. So for him, that wasn't anything to react to. He sees it all the time and didn't think twice about it. And it really was a way of reframing the way that we program ourselves to react. And I thought about that. And since then, I've actually been more aware of how I drive. And it also reminded me of something. Every single one of us has cut someone off, not on purpose, I would hope, accidentally. And we all have. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And you try to, and they're honking at you. And it's like, we've done it. So come on, give someone grace, give someone the benefit of, who knows, maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe their wife is pregnant. They're rushing home to get their, who knows? It doesn't really matter. But the point is we carry that with us and we're allowing that to affect us in a way to where we don't need to. So just that one example is how you can change the way you react and respond. And it's an ongoing process. And that's what I love about doing ultras is there's a point to where now physically I'm not going to get faster. I wish I could see a sub 1500 miler again. That was my PR. I don't ever like to say things are impossible, but it's extremely unlikely. Let's just put it that way. It's probably never going to happen. But physically, although I may not get faster, I can always work on my mental aspect and my mental training. That's a muscle that can always keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So you'd ask me a question about put this into perspective with a race. I was at Leadville 100 in 2013, and I'd gotten in, the race was full, and happened to be a guy that was on my crew, Nathan. He knew someone that was one of the big sponsors of Leadville. And this is another Badwater. He had crewed me. It was in July. Leadville's in August. And I said, yeah, I'd love to be able to do Leadville. Of course, it sold out and months ago. So he said, Ed, I might be able to get you in. It's one of those, is the right person. And so he made his contact, and they said, yeah, I'll give him an entry. So, and then it was scary because for me, I have some challenges when it comes to elevation and just breathing wise. And so I've had that as a challenge. And I like to work on the words that we use. I don't use the word struggle. Struggle is a frame of mind. Discomfort is inevitable. Struggle is optional. We choose to struggle. And most of the time when we're struggling, it's self-induced struggling. I pushed myself too hard. It was too hot. I wasn't hydrating. I made mistakes, and now I'm paying the price for that. Whereas if I had made better decisions earlier on, that wouldn't have happened. So back to this with Leadville. So I knew I've got this race and I struggle at elevation. At that point, my mindset was struggle. Now I'm challenged. And so people would ask me, Ed, I heard you're going to do Leadville. And my recording, the tape that was playing in my head, my automatic response was, yeah, but you know how hard it is for me at elevation. I'm really going to struggle at elevation. And that was the constant response I gave when people would say, what about Leadville? That's all I could think about. Oh, yeah, but it's elevation because, it's 10,000 feet and higher. Sure enough, get to Leadville, get to the 50-mile turnaround, went up over Hope Pass, which is at over 12,000 feet, highest I'd ever been in a race. Made it. I was having some difficulty breathing. Got to the turnaround. I had 20 minutes to spare before the cutoff. Headed back out. And going up the backside of Hope is actually a bit steeper. I convinced myself that I was not going to make it before the cutoff time because at Leadville, when you get to Hope, there's no hope for anybody to come get you. They don't send up a helicopter. They don't have roads there. You have to get yourself back down. So I saw myself missing the cutoff, and I still would have to get back down one side or the other, back to civilization. And I convinced myself that I was not going to make the cutoff. I turned around and went back to the 50-mile checkpoint, and my race was over. That was purely mental. Would I have made the cutoff at Leadville? I'll never know. I didn't try. I took myself out of the race because of my mental processes. And because of Amy telling me, you can't do it. Look how hard it was for you to go over Hope the first time. Now you're coming up and it's steeper and you don't have enough time. And then you're going to get up there and then it's going to be dark and then you've got to get back down. And why even do it? Don't even put yourself through that. Just go back. And I did listen to Amy, and that was the result of that. So that was a learning process that I had to go through, and realizing that I talked myself out of the race. Now, here's the lesson I learned from that is, if you can admit to that. Now, see, I could have just said, oh, it was a real struggle for me. I was going up and it was hard for me to breathe, and I knew I was going to make the cutoff. And so because physically I wasn't able to do it, I had to turn around. That would be an easy out excuse. It was mental. Now, I don't know. Would I have made it? Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't have. But at least if I had gotten there and had not made the cutoff, at least I would have known, well, I gave it my shot. I tried and I didn't give up. And so that taught me, and many times I will hear people say things why they DNF'd. More often than not, it is mental. The reality is it is, but we don't want to admit to that because it shows that we're weak, mentally weak. And I know I'm mentally weak. I know I have to constantly work on, even with all the races I've done, I still know that there's a mental weakness of letting Amy take over my brain and listening to Amy. But I've learned that. I've learned how to when I hear Amy's voice, I know I'll name the emotion that's with Amy, and realize, okay, Pre, do your job. And Pre's like, hey, we can do this, man. We've done it before. Look how many times you've done this. We're just going to make adjustments. We're going to get through it. We're going to finish it. It's not a problem. And so that's training your brain to listen to Pre. Now, with that in mind, many times we just shut down, and all we do is focus on the side.
Let's take Pre and Amy for a second, and remembering Viktor Frankl, and of course, the pause in between, and that's Seneca and Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and Cato the Younger. It's all of Stoicism, really. Heraclitus, and the pause is everything, right? We have a moment. In that moment is moment of choice. And your descriptions are great, that you were right in the middle of it. And to use your own example of Leadville is illustrative of what it happens when you're in the middle of it. So here's the question now. Is Mindshift, your coaching framework, your coaching strategy, is Mindshift something that you can teach someone before their first 100-mile race, or do they have to kind of earn it or really understand it through a DNF? Can you teach this before this real struggle happens?
I think so. Here's a way. And so there's nothing like being in the middle of a 100-mile race. The only way you're going to experience that is to actually be in it. So can you duplicate what you're going to experience? I don't think so. I think you've got to be in it. There's so many factors that come into play. But I've found, again, if there are certain techniques that you can use. So, for example, one of the best training techniques to strengthen the prefrontal cortex is to have a challenge that you have to face and you have to overcome. And there's a problem that I've had in the past is something as simple as streak running. I would try to do streak running, and I had lots of friends who were streak runners. And what I mean by that, if anybody's not familiar with the term, it's not ripping your clothes off and running naked, which could be fun. But it's actually running back to back every single day without a break. And there are people who have been streak running for 40, 50 years. It's just amazing. And they set whatever their minimum is. Many people, it's a 1 mile minimum, some 2. I know someone who's 4. I have a 5K a day minimum. 5K a day keeps the doctor away, or keeps the devil away, wherever you want to bet. It's a nice number for me, and it's easy enough to do. But I had a problem with doing this streak running because I'd have a day where I didn't get to it first thing in the morning. And then it's like later in the day, and it's like, I got to get it in before midnight. It's like, screw it. And then that was it. I had to start over again. And I, even with a buddy of mine, we decided to do a streak together, and we both started it. And sure enough, I got a month or 2 into it and took a day off. My buddy is still doing that streak, and it's like now, I think, probably close to 5 years. And I tried a couple times, he kept it going, but we did something different that really made it a difference for me. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he wanted to just stop drinking alcohol. And had a little bit of a challenge with that. It's not for me an issue. I've never drank and never will. And one of the reasons why I don't is because I don't trust myself. I know I'm weak. I have an addictive personality, believe it or not. Who would believe that? But so I'm afraid that I might like alcohol just a bit too much. And so I don't drink alcohol. I don't gamble. There's lots of things that I just don't do because I'm just not sure mentally I'm strong enough. But so I said, well, Jim, why don't we do this? Why don't we go with this? And we'll call it healthy hydration. We can say it in public. No one's going to just think, oh, yeah, I drink my water every day. Jim and I know what healthy hydration means for him. It means 0 alcohol. So I said, Jim, what if we do this? I'll start my run streak and we'll attach it to that. The benefit that I have is all I have to do is get my mileage in. And I said it as a 2 mile minimum. Now I've gone up to a 5K, but all I have to do is get my 2 miles in sometime in that 24-hour period before midnight, and I'm done. Jim, you have to resist the temptation to have alcohol, and for the whole day. I have definitely the much easier part of it. And at this point, we've now gone 1,200 and I think today is 61 days. So almost 3.5 years of doing my streak running because I had that commitment to my buddy Jim, and he's also been alcohol free all this time. And so I changed it to where my motivation was stronger now. And I linked it to another person to where I had accountability. Accountability is a big factor. Now let's come back to the streak running. Yesterday was a busy day. I didn't get my run in all day long. I finally got home. I traveled throughout Southern California with my work. I finally got home and I needed to get my miles in. It was 9 p.m. But that is where the growth comes from. See, if 30 days, if you run every day for 29 days and you're up to it and feeling like it, you're motivated, and then the one day you don't feel like it, that's the day of growth. The 29 days that are easy, no growth comes from that. Anybody can do that. It's the day you don't feel like it that you get out and do it. Now, it's very rare they'll have to go out that late. It happens every so often. But it's no longer, in the past, it would be a real struggle for me. It's no longer a challenge for me because I've developed that prefrontal cortex, knowing that I have time. Yeah, it would have been better if I got it done earlier, but I'm going to go out and enjoy. It's some reflective time. I actually was able to last night listen to one of your podcasts before our interview today. So I've taught myself that the challenges that we have, if we accept that challenge, it strengthens us. And one of the things that I do with my coaching clients is you got to move every day. Every day you got to move. I don't care if you set the minimum. You could be 10 steps. Obviously, I don't want them doing just 10 steps, but it's the point of getting out there and doing it, because every single time I've experienced this, and tell me if you've experienced this too, every time when you don't feel like going on a run for me or a race, every time I do, I'm always so happy I did. The regrets I have more than the DNFs are the DNSs. And if you look at my Ultra Sign Up, you'll see that at the very bottom of Ultra Sign Up, before it even shows my DNFs in red, it shows my DNSs in pink. And there's a whole lot of races that I was signed up for, and I didn't even show up to the start line. Those, to me, I regret those. I don't regret my DNS because I've learned a lot from them. Do I wish I didn't have 38 of them? Sure. I wish I didn't have 38 of them. And keep in mind that for me, a DNF is if I attempt a 24-hour race and don't get to 100 miles, that's a DNF. I'll not just sign up. I'm going to get whatever miles I got, 92, 94, 97. But I want to, in my mind, always think, at least for now, it's getting harder and harder to do a sub 2400, but I want to think in my mind that that's what I need to do. So I call it a DNF. But if you looked on my Ultra Sign Up, you'll see I have 1,600 mile DNFs that they show in the way they regard a 100 mile DNF. Anyway, hopefully that helped a little bit.
Right.
That it's when you have that challenge and you face that challenge, that's what makes you stronger. So that's one of the challenges I give to my coaching clients. You're going to move every day. And there are no off days. Are there rest days? Sure. There can be days that you're just going to go out and do just a very easy leisure walk if you want. But you're going to move every day because it's the day that you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. That's when you quiet Amy and you make Pre stronger. Because in a race, you've got to be able to go back to challenges that you overcame. One of the challenges is, hey, I did not feel like going out and doing my mileage, but I did it, and I was so happy. Once I started, it was great, and I'm so glad that I did it. In a race, we don't think logically. The logical brain, we're thinking, Amy, no, this is too much. I don't want to do it. I want to just quit. I want to be done with it. And if we can get ourselves past that, one of the ways to get past that in a race is think not the next aid station. And that's what we always say. We'll just get to the next aid station. No, think of the next two aid stations, because it's so easy to get to the next aid station. All right, I did it. I got here. I said I'd get to the next aid station. Now I'm done. No, it's two. So I'm here, but I committed I'd get to two aid stations. And sure enough, you can get past whatever you're dealing with. We have a phrase we love to say, if you'd ask somebody, hey, how you feeling? Oh, I feel great. I'm on top of the world. Just wait. And we also like to say, if you ask somebody, hey, how you feeling in a 100-mile race? Oh, man, I'm bad. I don't think I'm going to be able to keep going. Just wait. Because unlike a marathon where there's one wall, in a 100-mile race, there might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different walls, and you just overcome each one at a time, and it'll get better. This too shall pass. It's a short period of time in the whole specter of time, and you'll be okay.
You'll get through it. Before we get into basically your kind of ideal coaching client, let's segue with this one. It looks like in 2025, you ran 56, if that's right, 100-mile races, I think, in 2025 alone, and you were 62 at that time, same age as me. What keeps you mentally, and you were just speaking of this, what keeps you mentally engaged race after race after race? Because most people can't find that once. And I love that you just suggested runeveryday.com or, be a run streaker, because that's a really valuable way to just say, okay, just make a promise to yourself that, to do movement every day, to run every day. But that's a lot of 100-mile races. At 62 years old, you already got all these other kinds of records. What keeps you mentally engaged, Ed? Like race after race? How's it done?
Okay, that's a good question. So, Mark, my job in a 100-mile race, what is my job? What am I there to do in a 100-mile race? What's my number one job?
Finish. Start.
That's not.
I shouldn't have said anything. You tell me? What's your number one job?
It was a setup. Because most people would say that, and that's what I would have said previously. Okay. Yeah, my job is to finish the race. My number one job is to survive, to to live to run another day. And I say that because I was 23 races into my 100-mile racing career, if you want to call it a career. But I was 2,300 miles in and had not had a real, quote, DNF. I had 2 drop downs, and I now call those DNFs. So that's part of my 38. Like if I did a 100-mile race and I did a drop down to 100K, I call that a DNF. Ultra Sign Up gives me credit for the 100K because I have that option. And I personally don't like when races allow people to do a drop down because it's an easy out. I'd rather, even personally, because I'm going to still call it as a DNF, even if I get the credit for it. So I had one drop down to 100K and one drop down to a 50-mile race. And I met this race. It's called Mogollon Monster. It was the very first year of Mogollon Monster. It's in Pine, Arizona. For me, it's a challenging race because it has a lot of climbing and it's up elevation. But I had never had an actual 100-mile DNF at this point. Now, my friends at that point, most of them had very few hundreds. So I was kind of the big fish in the small pond, so to speak. And I was getting kind of a big head, quite frankly, and thinking I was somewhat invincible. And I also had the attitude that I saw many people promote, and that's death before DNF. It's like, yeah, I'll die before I DNF. I'm not going to DNF. That's for wimps and losers and weaklings. Well, I met this particular race, and it doesn't go quite as well as I was expecting, and I had some challenges. And I ended up I timed out. I didn't get to one of the checkpoints. And this one did not have a drop down option. This was actually my first official 100-mile DNF. Well, you know what? I completely changed my thinking.
Okay.
I kind of think I'll take a DNF over death any day. So my thinking evolved. But I met someone at that race that changed the way I looked at races from that point on. I was trying to find my way and came upon this old geezer. I mean, this guy was like old as dirt. He was 62. I'm 63 now, but back when I was in my mid to late 40s, that was an old dude. And so we're going along and trying to find our way, and the course markings were a little bit challenging. And so he was like, all right, you look on the left, I'll keep my eyes on the right. And if you see any more markings, we'll make sure and make proper turns. So we're chatting and we're talking about different races, and the subject of Western States came up, which is a race that I hadn't done, wanted to do. And he had mentioned that he did it well. I was going to show off my newfound knowledge to my new trail friend. I had just read an article in Ultrarunning magazine about the Grand Slam, which for any of your audience who may not know, it's 4 of the oldest races, 100-mile races. It starts out with Western States in June, Vermont 100 in July, Leadville 100, and there's other options you could do, but in August, and then it ends with Wasatch 100. So these 4 races, if you do all 4 of them in that summer, it's the Grand Slam. Well, I just read an article about a guy who had the most Grand Slams. His name was Dan Brendan. And so this old geezer who doesn't know anything, he's just an old dude. I'm telling him, oh yeah, there's this guy named Dan Brendan. He's like done 7 Grand Slams. And this guy's just quiet, not saying a word. And I'm just going on and on about this. You can see where the story is going. Eventually he sort of put me on my misery. He said, hey Ed, I'm Dan Brendan. And I had a whole lot of humble pie to eat right there, because I'm telling this guy a story that I kind of lived it. I sort of know. Yeah, you don't need to tell me my own story. But the interesting thing is, once I got to know this guy more, now I'm super impressed. This guy's no longer this old geezer. This guy's like the coolest dude ever in the whole wide world. And so then I start finding out that he's done not only 7 Grand Slams, this guy's done over 100-mile races. I was completely blown away because I'm the big guy, and the big fish in my little pond with, my 2300s. This guy's done over 100. And this is back before David Crockett started doing the record keeping. And now we know there's 39 people who've done at least 100 hundreds. But we didn't know that back then. And so now I'm thinking, right. I got to find everything I can from this guy. And so I said, I'd love to pick your brain if I could. He said, yeah, I'm happy to help you. And I said, well, obviously, first off, you know everything there is about doing 100-mile races, right? You've got this down to a science, right? He said, well, Ed, he said, you know what? I'm still playing around with different shoes. He said, I'm still tweaking my nutrition at the aid stations. He said, it's a learning process. And I said, Okay, I'm a little bit baffled because you've done 100 of them. I mean, how could you get through that many and not have this completely figured out? Well, I've now done more than anyone else in the world. I've done 309 100-mile or longer race finishes, and then you add my DNFs, it's 348 100-mile attempt, 347 100-mile or longer attempts. I know exactly what he was talking about. You're always learning. You're always trying to figure things out and learn new stuff. And he taught me that lesson that I needed to know. And by the way, both Dan and I did DNF, and that was my first official 100-mile DNF. And I learned the lesson that you're always learning. And as soon as you think you might know it all, that's exactly the time where the ultra gods, and I don't want to offend anybody's religious beliefs, so we'll call it the lowercase GAWDS. But the ultra gods will say, it's time for you to learn a lesson. Boom, there's a DNF right there. You needed because you got your head too big and you got out of being logical. And so that's the problem. Sometimes Amy goes the other direction. She could get so emotional as she's trying to stop you. And then she can go the other way, like, oh, you can do anything. You can do all these things, and because she's too emotional. And you got to know that maybe she's not being very logical and pushing you on your pace because I can do anything. I'm invincible. And sometimes you've got to get a little bit of a lesson to rein that in. So I learned from talking to Dan that, again, I made a judgment on this guy. This guy's an old geezer. I had no idea the experience that he had. And it taught me not to be judgmental, not only about others in a race. And I've done that many times. I'll size up my competition. Of course, we get to do that on Ultra Sign Up, see their past history. And then I'll start making judgment calls. And I've learned many, many times that you can't do that because there's factors that come into play that aren't showing up on Ultra signups. And it's one of the biggest factors of all is someone's mental toughness and having the ability to go to the prefrontal brain and bypass Amy. And these are people who have experienced challenges in their life. One of the easiest for me to coach, one of the easiest people to coach, groups of people, are people who have had really tough situations that they've overcome. Maybe not necessarily in running marathons or 100-mile races, but just life events they've overcome. Some of the hardest people for me to, as a coach, are people who have not experienced that much challenge. They've had, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, so to speak. Everything's kind of worked out for them. Everything's always gone their way. They don't know how to overcome challenges because their prefrontal cortex is so underdeveloped, and Amy is so strong that overpowers everything. So learning how to, again, address it, knowing that that's the Amy brain, the amygdala, the reptilian brain that's trying to be reactive, and knowing that's normal, that's going to happen, be aware of it, be able to name the emotion and be able to look past and say, yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you for doing your job. You're right. I need to be aware of this, but it's not the end of my race. I'm not going to stop the race. I just need to be aware of this. All right, Pri, help me out. Let's use some logic. How do I get through this? Yeah, I'm really struggling. What do I need to do? And Pri starts to say, okay, well, first off, when's the last time you took in any calories? And Pri comes in and starts telling us things that we need to do logically. Maybe you need to slow it down a bit, give your body a little bit of break. You're pushing yourself too hard on the pace. And that's letting Pri come through, realizing that Amy's just doing what she's made to do.
I don't do races for destinations per se or for the beauty, although I do enjoy nature. I do like being out there. I want to share time with people. Now, for me, the most satisfaction I'm going to get from a race, well, okay, close. Finishing is a big deal, of course, but a really, really, really close second is being able to help somebody with their race. One of the greatest compliments that I can ever have is someone to say, Ed, I would not have finished the race without you, without what you did for me, without you helping me, without your words of advice, without you spending the time with me on the course. That's my biggest goal and accomplishment, if you will. And so it's the word hope. I want to be able to give people hope, but the hope is an acronym. It's help other people excel, but it goes even beyond that. It's help one person exist. And if I can help one person exist, meaning that they're not going to drop out of the race, if I can just get them to stay in the race, and then help one person to excel is the eventual goal, but and endure is part of that too. Help one person exist, and help one person endure, help one person excel. And that steps I have to sometimes take people through. They're ready to drop out. If I can just get them to stay in, and that's the challenge. But if I can do that and help somebody to finish their race, that it just brings me so much satisfaction at this point. I still want to expand my world record. I want to push it so far out there to where no one's going to break it in my lifetime. After I die, sure, I don't care. But I don't want anybody breaking. I've had world records that have been broken. I don't like it. Yeah, I like to keep.
You don't like it, okay?
I don't like it. But that's the thing for me is my goal is to help somebody else. Now, here's the selfish part of it. When I'm having a rough patch, again, I don't use the word struggle, but a challenging or a rough patch, I've experienced it so many times. I know the best way out of it, find somebody else that's having a tough time. As soon as I start to focus on them, I forget all about myself. My pains seem to go away because I'm now, if I'm not, I'm thinking of all the pains and all the difficulty and why am I doing this? And this is just silly, ridiculous. I could just quit. But when I find somebody else and focus on them, suddenly that becomes my whole intention of the race is to get that person to the finish line. And it helps me. And I tell people this all the time. And it's so good that it's just selfish that I want to finish the race, help find someone else to get them to finish the race. That's the way I'm going to finish my race. But it really does work. And I tell people that all the time when they ask me, Ed, what do I do when I get to a really hard place? Find somebody else, help them. And every single time I've done that, it's helped me get, and I've also had some DNFs where I was helping somebody, but we end up both not finishing. But the experience that I have and the memories that I have from that are well worth it, even if it doesn't result in a finish. I like to look at every race I do from this point on. This is my last race. I'm never going to do another 100-mile race again. Now, that's not my plan. I plan to, my goal, and I always set a high-end goal. So my goal right now is to do 444 100-mile finishes. I'm at 309. I have a ways to go. Will I get to 444? I don't know. At one point, my goal was to get to 100. Then it was 200. Then it was 300. And I could say 333, but yeah, that's going to be too easy to get to. So I'm
too close. It's too close.
Yeah, too close.
Yeah, it's too close.
But the point is, in any day, this could be any race. It could be my very last race, and I want to make sure that if it is, it's like Groundhog Day that repeats itself over and over and over again. Or if the ultra god stuck me in a race and said, "This is your life," like Sisyphus, you're going to be to the rest of your life, every day is doing this race over and over and over. Well, then I better make it a darn good race, an enjoyable race, so that if I have to repeat it, it's not miserable. And so when you say, what's my number one goal now? It truly is having a great experience. And hopefully that means finishing the race. That's what I'm there for. That's what I want to do. But I've had enough of them where I didn't finish them, and yet I look back and say, that was a great experience. I really enjoyed that event.
Perfect. That is perfect, Ed. And I think the level of personal connectivity you have with people, my gut says it's because you've done hundreds of races. When hundreds and hundreds of races, there's other experiences you as a runner would probably, and your mind, brain, body, and heart and soul are interested in other types of feedback and experiences when you're out there running because you run so many races. And it would make sense that part of now the most important piece is the connection, the community with the individual person. Let me just help one person. That's a perfect segue into why I really wanted to get on the podcast today, which is your coaching, the Mindshift Coach sentiment. So let's talk about your ideal client. I imagine, because I talked with you, a busy person, maybe they're professionals, maybe they've ran a handful of races. They want structure and direction. Of course, they know that they know enough that they'll save time, energy, and effort if they find the coach and work with the coach and just let them deliver on whatever their objective is and whatever their goal is. So, so tell us about, what's your ideal kind of client as a coach, and what does that person need from you that they really can't find in a internet training plan or a YouTube video?
Okay, I don't know that I actually have an ideal client. I'm not trying to skirt the question or make it complicated, but I will tell you the easiest coaching client that I have ever had is a client that was a friend of mine for many, many years, and I encouraged her to step up into doing hundreds, and also her husband and also her young son. This was an individual who every single thing I asked her to do, she did without question. Just, you tell me what to do, Ed, I'm going to do it. Now, her goal was, she'd already done quite a few hundreds, and her goal was to do a sub 24-hour 100. And the race was actually 106 miles, and she did it in, I think, 23:20 maybe. So even though it was over 100 miles, she still got way under her goal time, and was third female overall in a race of like about 100 people in her fort. I mean, it was a really, really good experience. After the coaching was done, she had accomplished her goal. Then she told me the truth. She said, Ed, so many times the workout you gave me, I did it, but I cried afterwards. And I said, Shauna, why didn't you tell me that? I would have adjusted it. She said, no, I didn't want it to be easier. I wanted you to make it hard, because her mantra was, I can do hard things. And sure enough, now that was the easiest client I've ever had. I have another client that I'm actually working with now. This is our third time working together, and she's a challenge. And she knows we've had this conversation, but she questions stuff, which is okay. I'm okay with the questioning, but and she's also a great client. I have a client now I'm working with that my middle daughter puts on local 5K races in our area, and she actually made it. It was a 2-loop 5K, the one that she had just put on recently. And so she did a 1-loop, which is 1.55 miles. This young lady came out and did the race, and I didn't know until afterwards. I'm because I'm dad, I'm the guy with all the hats. I go mark the course. I'm the race announcer. I'm the guy at the end that helps her clean everything up. That's what dads do. But she also has crewed for me 7 of my 10 Badwaters. So it's kind of like I need to pay back to all that she's done for me. Anyway, this young lady, she said, I would not have done this race if it was a 5K. I don't think I could do a 5K. Now we, as runners, especially ultra runners, we think 5K? I do that before breakfast 2 or 3 times. I mean, really? But for her, she wouldn't have done it. And she said, I want to hire you as my coach. And we're working with her. I'm working with her now, and we're working towards her getting to a marathon. Now, she thinks she's training for a marathon. And I've already joked around with this, that I'm trying to bring her over to the dark side, because constantly my job is, when I coach someone who wants to only do a marathon, you're going to do an ultra. We're going to get you into the ultra community, because that's where I'm always trying to convince people. So
right.
There's no one ideal client. It's a client that I can help. If I can help them, that's the client for me.
Okay. What's the first mind shift that you work on with a new athlete? Like the first thing that has to change before anything else can?
The first thing we have to address is how do they talk to themselves? Now, this could be someone who already does great self-talk, and if that's the case, then we move past that. But I find that most of us, especially someone who feels that they need a coach for a reason. And let's face it, you can go on the internet and download any training program for any distance you want. You could have Chat GPT to be your running coach if you wanted to. People look for a human as a coach, I think, because they want that human connectivity that we still don't get from AI. AI is getting there. Eventually, maybe we won't need guys like me anymore. I'll just be the dinosaur. But people want to have that human connection. And I think many times it's because they know that on their own, they just don't feel like they can accomplish it, whether they don't feel like they have the skill set or that they're just going to talk themselves out of it. So that's the first thing we have to do is look at the way that they talk to themselves. And what I have to convince them is to trust me to a point to where, do you trust that I'm going to take you past your comfort zone, but not past your capacity? If you trust me as a coach, I'm never going to push you so hard, because the last thing I want is for you to get injured or burned out. That's a terrible coach. My job is to work with what you have and to make what you have, your skill set, even better and stronger, and guide you along the way, and make sure I don't put you in a position that's going to put you at risk. And so getting them to self-talk and say, yes, I can do this. And I had someone that I do public speaking, and this individual, I'd made a challenge that I would coach anybody to do this is like 10 years ago. I'll coach anybody to do their first marathon, and I'll coach for free. This is when I was just starting out to do some coaching and do a little bit of paid coaching. And I said, I'll coach you for free, but you have to see me as soon as I finish talking. You don't get to wait till tomorrow morning. We got to strike with iron hot. So this one individual said, Ed, yeah, I'd love to do a marathon, but I can't. My knees are ruined. I played too much hardcore, basketball, and ruined my knees as a kid.
Right.
I can't run. And my response was, John, you don't have to run. You can actually walk. Oh, yeah, well, no, I can't. He heard me give the presentation another time. He said, I'd love to do a marathon, but I'm too heavy. I can't do it. It's just going to be too hard for me. And he was quite a bit overweight. And it's like, yeah, I can't run, Ed. And it was back to, again, you don't have to run, John. You can walk. You can walk. Third time he heard me give the speech, he said, okay, Ed, I still don't believe I can do it, but I believe in you. And if you believe in me, then let's give it a shot. And he's done 2 marathons. So I have to get people to believe in a voice. The voice they really should believe in is their own voice, and get past the amygdala, get to the prefrontal cortex. But sometimes that's just difficult. So I have to be that voice initially to tell them, yes, you can do this. And anytime, this is to me a non-negotiable. You do not talk yourself down. You do not say bad things about yourself, ever. I don't care if you didn't go out and do the daily training that I want you to do. Okay, we'll get past that. That's okay. Let's start again. But you don't beat yourself up, and train your brain to give yourself grace when grace is needed, and train your brain to take little victories. The smallest little victory is worth celebrating. And as people get to have more and more victories, and that's one of the things that I really love, is taking someone from zero. Those of us that have been doing this for a while, we sort of get set in our ways. We learn how to do it. And some people aren't really coachable. I mean, they think they are, and they can be. I've worked with many, many people. But someone who's like, I'm going to do everything that you tell me because I don't know anything. Like my one client, she knew a lot already. She didn't need me. She'd already done probably 15 or 20 100-mile races, but she had a specific goal, and she wanted me to help her with that goal. And she said, whatever you say, Ed, I'm going to do it. But I like working with people that are like, okay, if that's what you say I should do, I'm going to do it. And I have a client right now that we've got her down to 1 mile because she has a little knee issue. We're trying to get that figured out. And she's mentally maybe have a little bit of a struggle because she doesn't see that. She's like, let's go. But it's like, no, we need to do this, because if we just go and push, it could get worse, and then it's going to take much, much longer. Just, you have to be patient, trust the process, trust me as your coach, trust my voice. And so that's the first thing. What is your voice? What is your self-talk? And you can't control the first thought that comes into your head. I remember I grew up in a very religious home, and I was told, in church, you're going to pay a price for the thoughts in your head. It's like, you can't control the first thought, but you can control the second thought and the third thought. And that's what the first step is, getting people to realize that they have that control and how they respond. And that's to me the challenge. Yeah, the physical aspects of giving them a training plan, but I'll tell you honestly, because I've seen this so many times, I've seen people that show up to 100-mile races that do no training, but they have the experience and they're able to, they're not going to have a fast 100, but they have the muscle memory and the mental capacity of having done it before. That's the only time they do any running or walking is at the races. Because they know that they can. But people who don't know that, the point I have for them is, okay, let's do it on a step-by-step, simple, basic plan, get you to rethink the way you talk to yourself, and let's get you into a consistency. A consistency is a system that's consistent. You can repeat over and over and over. And many times when people have a goal that just seems too overwhelming, it's because the first step isn't small enough. Now, I wish I could take credit for that, but I'm stealing that from somebody. I heard a woman that talked about, she interviewed hundreds of people that were very successful and wanted to learn about their mantra. And one of the women that she interviewed said, well, I don't really have a mantra, but my second grade teacher taught me this. Anything that seems too hard, the first step is too big. And I've just changed around that the first step is small enough.
That makes a lot of sense.
It really works. So anyway, I love the mental process of getting people to see things and the click and going, oh, I get it now. And maybe they don't get it at first, and then see how they change the way that they talk and the way that as they respond to me in our daily text, what they're saying, and this just gentle nudging. It's like, all right, I understand what you're saying, and that is a concern, but it's don't catastrophize it. It's okay. We'll make it work. You're doing great. Don't beat yourself up. You're doing take the victory. You've got a little victory. You got a little win, and let's just build on the wins. And that's what I love. That just is so fulfilling to me when I could do that and help somebody get into the mind space where they can conceive of doing a marathon or an ultra or a 100-mile race or a multi-day race.
Okay. Now, our listeners are 55 to 70 plus. Most of them are not here to run 56, 100-mile races in a year. They may be trying to finish the next one or try to finish one at all, like you just said, maybe a marathon. So, but a lot of them, I believe, are fighting the voice in their head that might say they are too old for this. So what do you say to that voice?
Well, first, you have to acknowledge it, that is valid, that we are older, and because we're older, there are things that we have to be aware of. For one, if we fall, it's going to hurt a lot more. If we get injured, it's going to take a whole lot longer for us to heal up. So we want to avoid getting hurt. That's one of the biggest issues is, yes, you are older. We're going to go, older just means just go slower. And I mean that not just in the actual race and pacing, but metaphorically as well. Let's take it slower, step by step. Let's not jump in and go out and do 10 miles and you haven't done anything and then you can't even walk for a week. Let's start with 10 steps and get you through that. Now, I'd rather see someone consistently doing a much smaller incremental, the compound effect of something small, but build on that just a teeny little bit more, but start out small enough. If the first step is small enough, I can get them to start. It's just that they overwhelm themselves because the amygdala is saying it's too much, it's too big, you can't do it, don't even think about it, don't even try. Whereas we can say, all right, Amy, that's fear. That's valid. You don't ever dismiss it as it is valid and it's protective, but we can work through that, work past that. So yeah, that is the very first thing, is their self-talk. And once I get them to start being more positive, their self-talk, and there's a challenge that I'm doing with my wife right now. One of the guys that I follow, because I also need to learn and continue to improve. It's a guy, Rob Dials, an amazing guy. And he put a challenge to do 30 days, no complaints. Don't complain for 30 days. That's hard. That's a challenge. And we're just into it a little bit. And we have to remind each other, oh, was that positive? And so there's always
that's a good exercise. That's an ancient, stoic challenge as well. Like, just do it one day and then do it another day, and then don't complain for 3 days, and then don't complain. So you get to 30 days, you are more peaceful, you're more relaxed, you're less reactive, right? It's really powerful. That's a good challenge to do with a couple too, I think. Yeah. So thank you for all of this, Ed. Lots of wisdom nuggets here to pick up, including, I heard you drop in, like, you text somebody every day, and that. So we really haven't talked about the framework. Let's kind of end the conversation with that, I suppose. If someone's listening to you right now and they're thinking, man, this guy's done so much, and he could be my coach. Like, what does working with you actually look like? And how do people find you? They want to start and learn a little bit more, and they want to push that button because they want some structure, and they do want to do the thing they haven't done yet. They need to connect with you. Talk to us about the structure of the coaching, and then how do they find you?
Okay. So the structure is, we put together a training plan, the physical plan, based on where they are now. And we start out just the most easiest, simple step that they know they can accomplish. Because what I want them to experience is that every day of training is an enjoyable day. I don't want them to say, I hate running. That is, to me, the saddest thing in the world, when I hear someone say, I hate running, but I want to run a marathon. I hate running, but I want to run a 100-mile race. It's like, we got to get you past that. You got to change. You can't hate it. I don't want to coach you for something you hate to do. Why? That's miserable. Right. And so we get them with a small enough step. So put together a framework of a week plan. I go a week at a time, only because we need to adjust it. If I give them a whole month plan, it might be too much. I might sometimes need to adjust it up. They're doing so well, they're not really being challenged, and they're ready to move up. And it's like, all right, after you're ready for it, let's go. But sometimes also, as they've come into something that's a body issue that we've got to adjust, and we've got to bring it back down. So the structure itself of the racing, or the running and walking, and that's a big thing for me, and that's why I love working with older clients, is because they're much easier to convince that walking is a big part of it. People don't realize, because we say run. I ran a 100-mile race. Well, my best 100-mile time, my PR when I was 51, I did a 1450 100, and that was my split on the way to 144.6 miles in a 24-hour race. That's probably one of the few races where I actually ran the whole race. It was a sub 9-minute mile pace. Wow. 100 miles. But then the next 44.6, I did a walk run and still got that many miles. And most of the races I do are, by far, much more of it is walking. I only run probably once a week in training. Sometimes it might be 2 or 3 days, depending on if there's a run group. Like my daughter's run club meets Wednesday nights, and there's a run club that I join on Saturday mornings. We run. Now another one on Sunday. So if I'm joining a run club, I'll run. But on my own, typically I'm walking and power walking, working on that, because you can get a great workout, but it's much easier on the body. And when I go to a race, I'm doing running and walking. So going back to when I set a plan up for somebody, especially if it's an older person, they are relieved many times when I say, we're not going to start you out running, or very little running. When we start you out walking, get you cardiovascular fitness base with walking, and we'll start incorporating some running in, and we'll slowly build up your body. We don't want you to get injured. That's the last thing we want. Number one goal as a coach, my number one goal for my client, they think the number one goal is to get them ready for the race. No, my number one goal is to keep them healthy. Because if they're and healthy, meaning injury-free, because if they get injured, it sets everything back. And the worst thing that I can have with one of my coaching clients is they've got something going on and they don't tell me. I had a coaching client that I was coaching them, and we got together to do a group run, and I noticed that he was favoring his one leg. It's like, what's going on? Oh, I tweaked my knee. It's like, oh no, that just happened this morning or yesterday? No, 3 weeks ago. It's like, why am I only finding about it just now? We'll work through this, but it's going to take so much longer because you weren't, straightforward with me. So for me, the structure is put together the plan, but also there's a daily connection that we have to have. I require my people to move every single day. I can't force them. If they don't one day, it's like, okay, I'm not happy about that, but let's move on. You knew that when you didn't do it. You knew that, and I don't scold people. It's not my job. They're adults. They don't need to, I don't need to put them in running timeout, but they need to be aware that they're going to be accountable to me. If they don't do it, I want to know why, just like, okay, now let's learn from it. Okay. You didn't, do your movement yesterday. And I like to use other words like movement or exercise, whatever works for them, because words, some people have trigger words, but if they're not doing their movement, they didn't they didn't go out and move yesterday. Why? Now let's figure out what do we do to make sure that doesn't happen in the future, and we'll learn from it. It's okay. It's okay. We're just going to move forward. And so for me, I need to have that daily connection with my runner. It's a simple text. It's like I'm lazy and that I don't want to do any more work than I have to. Don't make me look for your run. Put it on Strava. Send me your Strava link, and I don't want to have to go searching. What'd you do? When'd you do it? And then give me some basic information, and I'll get back to you and say, it looks good. Here's, be aware of this. But the reality is, and I'm going to talk myself out of coaching clients by saying this, but it's boring. It's not the sexy stuff. What we do on a daily basis is just do the same thing consistently. It's just very, very boring. A good friend of mine, Andy Noyes, he said, be boring, not epic. I don't completely 100% buy into that. I say be boring, then epic, or be boring
beautiful.
to be epic. It's the things that we do. The old Under Armour commercial with Michael Phelps, what you do in the dark brings you into the light. And so speaking of Andy, that's actually the shirt I'm wearing is an Andy Noyes shirt, and there's a whole story behind that. And I take Andy with me now. Every 100-mile race I've done, I've now done over 100 100-mile races with Andy with me. He passed away 5 years ago. He was my best friend, and I miss that guy. But he's still alive with me, and he's out there with me at my races. But again, it's Andy and I, we butt heads many times on our philosophies on running. And Andy's a guy who could do that with me. A lot of people, maybe they're intimidated. They won't question what I say. Andy would question everything, and I needed that. I don't have that anymore. But the point is, it's not sexy. It's not I'm not going to put anybody down because I just not the way I operate. But there are people who are run influencers, and they're very much out there on social media. That's not me. And you might look at me and go, "You're a Jester. I mean, come on. How can you say that? Look at all the color. You want to get all that attention." I'm not the Jester to get attention. There's reasons why I'm the Jester, philosophically and other reasons. But the point that I want people to understand is, whatever you do, you could put on your own social media, whatever you want, as long as it's positive. If I catch you talking negative on social media, you're going to hear from me. I'm going to say, we don't do that. That's not good. Obsess about yourself, but about others too. Always build people up. But it's getting through the boring stuff. So the structure, again, as I said, and I get long-winded to go off on a side tangent, so sorry about that. But it's a week of what the plan is, looking with where they're at and what their goal is. The long term is whatever their goal is. Whatever their goal is, we're going to go for it. Some people have goals that are like, that's your goal. That's ambitious. But I never want to be the person that says, no, you can't do that. How do I know? I've done things that people say are impossible to do. I've done them. So I know better than to tell somebody else, you can't do that. It's just like, are you willing to put the work in? Because that's going to take, you're going to have to earn it. And that's the thing with my coaching clients, earn it. Everything, earn it. Do the work and do the boring stuff and make it fun. And I go out there and I make it fun. Now, I don't dress like this in my daily runs. None of my neighbors know anything about what I do, other than my license plate says 100 wins, and they don't even know what that means. And that's my goal. I have 8,400 mile or longer wins. My goal is to get to, that's one of my goals. I have multiple goals, but one of them is to get to 100-mile wins. And it's harder and harder to get the wins. So I don't know if I'll get there, but it's the challenge. And every time I go to
keep showing up consistently, you keep showing up, right? Okay, last thing then, Ed, you are a glorious example of the sport. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining with us and sharing with us kind of the mindset that really is required in order to do the mind shift. The mindset is a thing, but the mind shift is the action. And I appreciate that so much. How can people find you right now? I want people to go and I want Coach Ed to help me out. How do they find you?
They can find me on Running with the Jester, Instagram. I have very few posts, and I'm not active on it. So if I'm not checking it every single day. So if they leave a direct message for me, I might not see it for a couple of days. So that's one way. Or on Facebook, I'm a dinosaur. I'm on Facebook, but I have it's called the Jester Nation, and it's open to anybody that can join that. And I see that more often. My coaching clients, they get my personal number, and we do a once a week coaching call, but also daily texting. But that's the best, but I'm not going to just give that out,
Right.
But also email, just my name, Ettinghausen at msn.com. That's probably the easiest way to get my attention.
Okay.
Within that day.
Okay. Well, we'll put that in the show notes, and I really look forward to supporting you and cheering you on as a coach, and we'll keep an eye out for that. It's been a pleasure, and I've learned so much as a 62-year-old, right, who's just a baby in the sport. I've learned a lot from you today, and I really appreciate that. So that's it. Thank you for being out here, and I'm going to do everything I can to go see you out there on the trail someday, sooner than later.
Sounds good. Love it.